Well, greetings. Lately I've been building some of these standing magnifying glasses. Here's a blank for one. And you can see I've been playing around with using up some of the smaller pieces of wood I have laying around the shop. If you're like me, as you work with some of these exotics and domestics too, you end up with a lot of pieces that are small. And segmented work allows you to use them. Here's a segmented blank that's going to be the vertical stalk of one of these standing magnifying glasses. And as you can see, this one's kind of elaborate. There's a lot of wood there. And I'm going to be turning that down fairly small, probably half of the minimum thickness even of this. And so it's going to be really striking as I cut through the angles here and make slopes and curves. As you can imagine, these various small, thin pieces of wood are going to give you a striking pattern. And I wanted to put it on a base that would be fairly dramatic too. Here's a laminated piece, and the base is really just a piece of ivory wood. I had two smaller pieces, so I just glued them together. And that's going to be fine. And I had some pieces here of zebra wood, and I thought I wanted to laminate this, but I wanted to have something a little more striking than a standard lamination. And what I'm going to play with is offsetting it, cutting these in half, and gluing them up so that they're laminated and not in a flat ways here, but offset as I go across. So the next one will be offset, and next one. And then I'm going to trim it and lay it up so that I end up with a blank where these are laminated, but they're on an angle. And I'll let you watch as I explore that, because this will be the first one I've done. So I want you to get to watch with me, and we'll probably design and build as we go. Now the first step is going to be, these pieces are already sanded. They're the same thickness, and they're smooth. But I still got to joint them. Well, what I'm going to do is not so much join them, I'm just going to cut them in half on my table saw so that I can start the process of gluing. So I'll do that now and let you watch that. I think when I laminate it too, I'm going to put thin wood in between each piece too for a little more complexity and fun. So stay tuned, and we'll get started. Well, I've already got an update. One thing I did was I was thinking about this more and how I'm going to do it. So what I did was I clamped these two pieces of zebra wood in a vise with an offset and started playing around with the dimensions. And as it turns out, I want to end up with a piece about at least 3/4 of an inch thick. This will probably be a little bit more. So I laid it with an offset, and I drew these lines where I figured I would end up trimming to, which means now that the piece has to be cut to here, which makes it about 1 5/16 long, which means that I won't be cutting these in half. I'll be cutting the pieces 1 5/16 long. So that's what I'm going to do next. That will give me a piece that is like this. So this is the piece I'll end up with, and I'll end up with one here too. But this is how I'll glue them together. So as you can imagine with this, I'll be cutting these corners off when I trim the final layup. But that's all part of the process, so that's what I'm going to go with. So I wanted to give you that little insight. So indeed, I'll still have some scrap from here out, but I'll probably keep those and do something else with them. So that's it. Let's move along. Okay, I've cut the pieces that I was showing you before, and I also found some pieces of thin Paduke that I'm going to go in between each layer with. And what I've done is stack them as a dry run just to see how it's going to look, and I'm liking the look of this. I'm going to do the 2 at a time, so I got 3 assemblies, I guess you'd call it, to do. You see how I'm overlapping the Paduk too, so that when I cut my angle, I know I won't have any voids. And I've also flipped the grain. You can see I could have the grain running the same, but I think it's going to be more striking to have it crisscross like this. That's something to keep in mind when you're doing segmented layups like this. Always be mindful of the grain orientation. Sometimes you want to play around with it a little bit to get more dynamic effect on your final piece. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm offsetting them all the same. You can see that. I could go like this too, and that will change things. Of course, you could say, well, you could flip it. That's true. But I'm doing all of them the same in one orientation here, just to keep it referenced right. And what I've done to make sure my offsets are equal is I made this little quick tool out of some scrap to give it about 3/8 of an inch offset to the main big pieces here. And that way there, they'll all come out evenly and the stack up will be good. That's my plan, and I'm going to try and make that all happen. So what I'm going to do is glue these together. And I don't want to do them all at once because it'd be impossible to keep everything from sliding around with all that glue on it. But I think I can handle with 3 pieces at once like this. So I'm going to put the glue on. Now, everyone says I always use too much glue. Maybe that's true, but I've never had anything come apart. So that's my main goal. So I'm going to do that. I always like to put a little bit on the adjoining piece, just to account for any kind of soaking in, as often, of course, happens with wood, just to give a little advantage. And since they're going to be overlapping a little bit, let's just start that process here. And then I, again, repeat the process for the other layer. And you see how it slides around, of course, because you got a nice little liquid bearing there. And I'll do here. Now, here's where I'll lay it up, use my little tool here to get that offset right. And I'm pushing down to keep the alignment right vertically here. There we go. I think we're good. I'm happy with that. I get my quick clamps here. I love these things. I use them all the time. As you know, when you do this kind of thing, that glue wants to let everything slide around, so you got to be careful. And apply the pressure slowly, walk up to it, and make it happen. So I'll do this for the other two, and then we'll come back for the step after that, which will be to put all 3 of these assemblies together into the final layup, and then we'll be ready to cut. Well, the 3 pieces are ready to be glued for the final assembly. We're going to go something like this with, of course, again, can't forget that extra piece that I'm putting in there. I am going to be able to clamp this. I already checked it out. You have to get a little clever with it, but with the clamps I have, I should be good. So let's move on with that. Gonna, again, spread the glue here. Now this will be the final glue up, and then the cutting starts to get the blank that I'm after. And this is after this, it gets to be a little more fun because we get to start seeing the final result a little more clearly. So let's put this here and here and here. This could be used for many different things, and I've already thought of another variation on it, but I'm going to stick with this. That's the problem with segmented work. As you get into it, you're doing one thing, then the idea, well, what if I change this? And then you get a little confused. So just keep those changes in mind while you work, and you'll use them next time. So again, I'm going to make sure this is all lined up reasonably well. Use my little check tool to get this offset proper. And I'm just putting pressure on it with my fingers first. You can see how it loves to slide around. And a little glue on my little position piece here, but no biggie. Now this starts to grab its position, I guess you could say. You can see how porous that Paduk is. You can see that the glue is actually coming in from the side and coming out through the end grain pores as I sit here and put pressure on it. It's coming up. So what I'm going to do is just double check this. That's pretty darn close. Wipe it off. And then I want to get this piece here just to eyeball it, because what I'm going to do is put a clamp on this. And the way I'm going to put the clamp is going to end up bringing the lines of force pretty close to down the center of my surface that I'm gluing. You can see it's not too far off the center of that. And I can put a little force there, and I still have enough room to put the next piece here. Actually, I probably want to move it a little bit out. It's really close to the limit. Now, if this didn't work that way, I could make a piece similar to this that would provide a flat clamping surface. But I think I can get away with it as it is this time. I've done that kind of thing before, and it still works out pretty good. So again, I want to check this. I think I want to move my clamp a little bit more out. Yeah, that should do it. Now I can glue the next piece. I'll clamp it the same way, just offset, and then I'll just let it sit. Again, you don't need tremendous force on these things, just enough to push it together. And the beauty of these clamps is that while they're sitting there, since they are sprung a little bit, that spring action kind of compensates if the glue pushes out of the way and lets the surfaces of the wood come together a few more thousandths. It compensates and keeps up with it, so you won't run out. Now I'm going to put a little extra on this surface because I'm not going to put any on that surface. It's just a little difficult to manage. So if I really goop this up, maybe that's a technical term, I don't know, but anyway, then I'll have enough glue to also go across in there. So again, come up with here, push that in. That won't allow me to go in that much, but this should still be good. And now get the other clamp, and I will go like so. So that's it. roughly for the gluing. And then there we go. And now I'll let that set, and then we'll come back and start cutting and trimming. Well, the gluing is done. And you see now we have this blank. What I've done is I've drawn the profile or outline of the final blank that I want to get out of this. So you can see hopefully the lines showing up. You can imagine this thing was glued together like so. And then you see the advantage of doing it this way, because if you did this with one big block, you'd be wasting all of this wood that you would cut off. Here, of course, you're just trimming off all the corners, you might say. And also, too, you can build this out of strips of wood, as we've already done. So let's turn the bandsaw on. Now, anytime you cut something like this, you really don't want to try to hold it by hand. I'm going to be cutting long ways instead of down this like this, so I can follow that line. So I'm going to hold it in a vise. So I'll position it and clamp it in place. I'll cut the ends off first, and then I can grab on the flats to trim off these corners here. So the first step, of course, will be cut the first line. Position of the device is a little wrong. Down a little further. One. Turn this around. Okay. Now, exacting precision isn't necessary at this point, because I'm going to be cutting a circle out of this. So let's get this turned down to where I can have that just overhang out the edge. And I'll trim the corners off. Trying to track along for me. Okay. The blade was tracking wrong for me. I have a really, really thin blade here. This, I think, is 18 thousandths thick. So it's clearly not having a good time. So realistically, I can leave that like it is. But I'm going to be cutting these corners off next too. Then I can cut my circle out. So I think you can see how it's going for here. And then this was really just to show you how to get a blank like this with angled laminations out of strips of wood. So that's it for the video, and hope you enjoyed it. Well, after that last cut, I saw that the blade guides on the bandsaw were not really working well. The blade had moved forward for some reason. Anyway, I readjusted the saw and made the next cut. It came out better. You see here how it was mistracking, and you can see that on the blank here too. But it's not something that's incorrectable. In fact, we're going to go to the lathe right now and do that. I'll finish off one side and make that flat for the post part of the magnifying glass holder. And then we'll be able to put it together. Then when I turn it as a full assembly, that's when I'll do the bottom. So we're going to go to the lathe right now and finish that up. So my setup here is I'm using the grippers that I make for the coal jaws. I'm going to put this on here and clamp it in place. Now I got the standoffs, as you can see, those pieces of wood. Those hold it off the face a little bit, have it stick out proud from the grippers so that I can finish this whole surface here uninterrupted. So now we're ready to rock and roll. Let's turn the lathe on here. I'm going to put on my face shield. I'm just going to use just a plain old conventional bowl gouge here. See how we're doing. Yeah, I still got a little bit of that cut to remove here, but it's looking pretty good. You can see, I'm sure, when that little cut got dislodged, yeah, that's all pretty much gone now. A little bit here I can feel with my finger. So, yep, another 1/16 or so. Looking pretty good now. Let's check it for flatness. Yeah, got a little work to do. So I'll make this flat. That's looking pretty good now. So, the next step is I'm going to get my tailstock slid up here, so I have to reposition it. I'm going to drill a very shallow hole here to take the dowel rod that will center the post that I've already drilled the other one end of that already has the hole for the dowel rod. So that will align to center for both of these. And then after I do that, I'm going to flip this around and just put a little center mark, and that'll come in handy when I go for the final turning. So let's do that. Well, here we are. I use the center drill first, just to kind of guide it. I'm sure you can tell I put you on the tailstock, so you're moving around when I move that. So don't get dizzy or anything, but. And that's that. Now, back to the center drill. And we're going to flip this over. Like so. And we're going to just mark the center. Good. Okay, that much is done. Now it's going to go to the final assembly point. Okay, final assembly is going to be the easy part now. I get the 1/4-inch dowels, I cut them short so I can put it in there and not have it bottom out on either hole. Here's the post part of it. And basic glue up here. So after all that work, it comes down to this. Just kind of goop it up. Get the dowel going. Get that in here. Gooch it together and let it set. Don't really need any weight or clamp on that. It'll be just fine. You can play with alignment of the laminations if you want. I guess it doesn't all that much matter. You can see I've already marked the center for that when we turn it. And we're good to go until the next step. So that's how I prepare the blank with a angled lamination base. Hope you enjoyed it. Well, after seeing how the laminated base was made and prepared, I thought you'd enjoy seeing the final piece. This is a standing magnifying glass, and you can see how the angles came out. Differentiation is good, and with the finish on, the colors really are dramatic, and coupled with the laminated stock, it's a nice piece. I think I'll show you too. Here's the magnifying glass I'm going to mount. When I get these, they have a handle on them. I take the handle off, which screws into this, and I cut little pieces of threaded rod to be nice and short. So part of it fits up in here. And what I do before I mount this, actually days before, is I secure the threaded rod in with some thread sealant. That's Loctite. I use, which one is it here? I forget. And the bottle's so dirty. I think it's a 431. I don't know. I can't remember. But anyway, that secures that in here. And as you recall, we threaded, maybe you didn't see it. It's a different video, but I thread the hole in here. Now, yes, it's a machine thread into wood, but to help it stay secure, I use E6000 on the threads of that. So let's put this together. I'll put a little bit. Actually, it's better, I found, thinking about it now, to put it in the threaded hole. So once that's in place, then I can get this going. Once it gets started, I just screw it in place until it stops. Once that takes a set, it's pretty well all locked together. So here we are. Completed standing magnifying glass. That's what I wanted to show you. And see if you want to make something like this yourself, or standing magnifying glasses, or who knows, any other thing. Thanks for watching.